Welcome to Module 1. This is Instructional Design Models. So this presentation is about the instructional design models as well as our current learners and how to meet them where they are. These are the objectives for the week. So if we take a look at these, you're going to describe the structure and purpose of 4 major instructional design frameworks. Compare and contrast the frameworks in terms of their goals and applications. Reflect on how these models can guide your own instructional design choices, and understand the learning preferences and characteristics of Gen Z and Gen Alpha learners, and consider how instructional frameworks can support their needs in digital environments. We all know these new kids that are coming to our classrooms, so we need to make sure that we know the best ways to teach them. So what is instructional design? Instructional design has always been about one thing: creating effective, engaging, and intentional learning experiences. Traditional models like ADDIE guided educators through structured planning, focusing on what to teach and how to teach it. But as our classrooms have evolved, becoming more diverse, more connected, and more digital, we've seen new frameworks emerge to meet new challenges. Think of it like building a house. ADDIE is your architectural blueprint. It ensures every step from foundation to roof is in place. UDL, which I'm sure you've heard of, makes sure the house is accessible to everyone, no matter their abilities or needs. TPAC reminds us that when we add smart technology to that house, we need to balance it with thoughtful design. And SAMR challenges us to not just put tech into the same rooms, but to build entirely new spaces we couldn't imagine before. Today we'll explore these 4 frameworks: 2 foundational to all instructional design, which is ADDIE and UDL, and 2 that specifically guide how we integrate technology, which is TPAC and SAMR. Each one brings a different lens. Together, they help us design learning that is structured, inclusive, innovative, and transformative. So let's take a look at the ADDIE model first. The ADDIE model is often considered the gold standard for instructional design. It follows a logical step-by-step process that starts with understanding your learners and ends with evaluating your effectiveness. While it's linear in nature, many designers use it iteratively. This model is also mostly used in project management or the business landscape, but has valid implications for education. On the next slide, we will watch a video about ADDIE that goes into a little more detail about the model and how it can be used in the educational world. So what I would like for you to do is pause and watch this video. I'm not going to record the video, so if you'll just pause in the presentation and watch this video, and then reflect on the ADDIE process. And remember as you're watching it that this was intended for the business landscape, but it has many implications for education.
How do you design an effective and engaging?
Sorry, I was clicking to the next slide and I went right to the video. Okay. UDL is our next one, which I'm sure you've heard of. This is in the education world, Universal Design for Learning. UDL is grounded in equity. It pushes us to plan for learner variability from the start, instead of retrofitting accommodations later. This model is particularly valuable when designing inclusive, accessible digital learning environments. So if you take a look, this is definitely based on cognitive neuroscience, and you can see here from the representation, action and expression and engagement, all of this coming together to find that sweet spot in the middle for the universal design for learning. And we want to make sure that we are understanding all 3 and how they come together to make that perfect spot in the middle. Again, this is another short video. This one is about universal design for learning, and excuse me. So probably when I click on this, it's going to go to the video and I will have to pause it.
Universal design for learning, or
So again, if you'll just take a minute to watch that video to better understand universal design for learning, and I will keep moving on. So this is TPAC, and this looks a little confusing with all of these pieces, but it's actually really easy to understand. TPAC reminds us that teaching with technology isn't just about using tools. It's about how those tools serve our pedagogy and content. It's especially relevant for educators designing tech integrated lessons. Teachers do not intuitively know how to integrate technology effectively within their content area. Through sustained professional development, collaboration, and support, teachers can improve their understanding of their TPAC. This can create an environment where teachers are using effective strategies to implement technology within the content. So if you look at our image here, you've got your technological knowledge. So this is you understanding the technology. Then you have your content knowledge. This is your math, your science, your social studies, your reading, all the content that you teach. You have that knowledge. Then over here you have the pedagogy, the strategies, the tips, the tools, all the things that you know how to do to reach your students. And then you bring all of those all those knowledge together into this sweet spot right here, which is where your technology is being used effectively. And you can see there's other areas where your technology and your content knowledge can come together, or your content knowledge, your pedagogy can come together, your technology and your pedagogy can come together. But what you're looking for is being able to effectively utilize the technology knowledge you have, the content knowledge you have, and the pedagogical knowledge that you have, and creating your lessons in a way that it's effective. You're effectively using that technology. This is a video about the TPAC framework, which really just goes into more detail about what we just talked about. So you'll take a few minutes to watch that one. This is the SAMR model, and I know a lot of schools have been using the SAMR model lately, so you may be familiar with this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this and kind of explain what the different levels of the SAMR model are. So SAMR gives us a ladder to think about technology use, not just whether we're using tech, but how deeply it transforms the learning experience. So the first level is substitution. That's your basic replacement with technology. For example, you previously asked students to write a persuasive essay on paper about a topic of their choice. Now students are typing the essay in Word or Google Docs. The next level is augmentation. Augmentation is improving on the task by using technology. So using the same example with substitution, students use the built-in grammar check, spell check, voice typing in Google Docs to support their writing. So you can see that now we've taken that original just on paper and we've added some technology. We've improved it. Modification is allowing for a significant task redesign. Students are collaborating in real time on a shared Word doc or a Google Doc, providing peer feedback through comments and suggestions. They can also embed links, images, citations. So this one we are redesigning by using technology. And then the last model, which is redefinition, is when the tech allows for creation of new tasks previously inconceivable. And this is where we're trying to get to. Students are now turning their essays into multimedia persuasive videos using tools like Adobe Express or Canva and publish them on a class website or YouTube for a global audience. They include visuals, narration, and interactive polls. On the next slide, Dr. Ruben Puentedura, it's hard to say his name, he is the one who created the SAMR model. So on the next slide, he's going to talk about the process. So if you will,
I think it's important for teachers to
take a few minutes to watch this video. And I love the fact that he is the one who created this model. So hearing him firsthand is really important to understanding how it was created, the process, and what his thoughts are. So next, let's take a moment to step back and ask some essential questions as we think about instructional design in 2025 and beyond, right? So um, thinking about our learners today. What is a digital native? Have you heard that term before? A digital native is someone who has grown up with technology, not as a new tool, but as an integral part of their daily life. They don't adapt to digital environments, they're born into them. Their expectations, habits, and cognitive patterns are shaped by always on, always connected access. We've got our Gen Z and our Gen Alpha students. So think about those students. Gen Z, born roughly between 97 and 2012, independent learners, pragmatic thinkers, and fluent in short form digital media. Gen Alpha, those born from about 2013 onward, are even more immersed in AI, mobile apps, and visual learning tools. These students are visual, interactive, and socially connected. They're used to immediate feedback, personalization, and agency in how they learn. What are these students' needs? They need learning experiences that are fast, visual, relevant, and flexible. They value voice and choice, and they expect digital tools to be seamlessly integrated. It's a part of their everyday life. Equally important, they need emotional connection and a sense of purpose in what they learn. Can we continue to teach using traditional methods and still meet their needs? Maybe. That's the critical question. Traditional methods aren't wrong. They just weren't built for the world our students now live in. We can't rely solely on lectures, textbooks, or static materials and expect deep engagement. To meet learners where they are, we need to redesign how we teach. So what changes can we make in our instructional design? That's where today's frameworks come in. UDL helps us plan for learner variability from the start. TPAC ensures our use of technology is meaningful. Excuse me, sorry. Sorry about that. I was having a bit of a technology issue. Let me go back. There we go. Okay, so TPAC. TPAC ensures our use of technology is meaningful, not decorative. SAMR challenges us to transform, not just digitize learning tasks. And ADDIE gives us the structure to do it all with intention. Together, these models help us design for this generation, not just around them. So these are just some thought-provoking questions that I wanted to pose for you to think about, because a lot of us get stuck in the way we've always taught, or these students should learn the way we teach. But I think we're at a point where we have to meet these students where they live, because these kids have grown up with this technology. It is a part of their world, and we need to meet them there. We need to figure out how to get where they are. So again, this is another just short video about digital natives. So if you'll take
Digital natives refer to individuals
to watch this video. This one is about Gen Alpha. So very interesting, this generation. So make sure you take a look at this one as well.
I've heard of Gen X
and make sure that you're processing how different these students are from the times that we grew up in. So here are some interesting statistics. Today's learners are bringing a whole new set of expectations to the classroom. Gen Z, for example, prefers learning by doing rather than just sitting through lectures. They want to engage with content in an active, hands-on way. Passive learning just doesn't hold their attention the way it might have for earlier generations. These kids are built different. And then we have Gen Alpha, who are growing up surrounded by personalized, on-demand experiences. They're not just watching videos, they're interacting with content through games, apps, simulations, and even virtual reality. This generation expects learning to be visual, interactive, and fast-paced. It's how their brains are being wired. Feedback is another big shift. Gen Z learners expect immediate feedback, whether it's on an assignment or in a learning game, because they are used to that. Waiting days for results isn't just frustrating, it actually affects their motivation. Gen Alpha takes this even further. They're used to the instant responses they get from apps like YouTube or progress bars in games. Real-time feedback isn't just a bonus, it's the standard. Not to mention, real-time feedback is important because students need to know right then if they're right, if they're wrong, what they need to fix. And here's something really important to keep in mind. Both generations are incredibly entrepreneurial. Gen Z already shows strong interest in creating their own paths, and Gen Alpha is projected to be the most entrepreneurial generation yet. With early exposure to creator tools, whether it's launching YouTube channels, selling digital art, or building games, they see their hobbies not just as fun, but as potential careers. So as we think about instructional design, we need to ask ourselves, are we designing for students who expect linear instruction or for learners who are constantly swiping, creating, and learning by doing? So looking at these statistics, which I don't think would be surprising at all, the percentages. But take this in and think about how this generation learns and what we need to be doing when we are designing our instruction to meet their needs. Here's another set. I love this 8-second attention span. They call it snackable content. Their attention span is 8 seconds. That's not very long. We need to really think about how we're teaching these students because they are different. They are very, very different. As we think about instructional design, it's not just about content or technology. It's about the whole learner. And for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, one of the most pressing issues is mental health, which I'm sure you have already started noticing in your classrooms. I know I have. Nearly half of Gen Z, about 42%, have been formally diagnosed, with a mental health condition, with anxiety and depression being the most common. That number doesn't even account for the many others who are silently struggling. And it's not just occasional stress. 91% of Gen Z report experiencing emotional or physical symptoms of stress on a regular basis. I've seen this firsthand. These children are struggling. Gen Alpha is following a similar and in some ways even more concerning path. We're seeing signs of anxiety and emotional stress as early as elementary school. For many of these students, digital overload, constant connectivity, and social isolation during key developmental years are taking a toll, which brings us to technology in the classroom. And how much technology should we be using since they are inundated with technology? Also, Gen Alpha's average attention span is about 8 seconds, like we talked about. That doesn't mean they can't focus. It means they're scanning for relevance constantly. If the content doesn't grab their attention quickly and feel meaningful, they'll mentally check out. Think about them scrolling all day. They're just scrolling constantly. And if that video doesn't catch their attention, they're on to the next one. So what does that mean for us as educators and designers? It means we need to create learning experiences that are not just engaging, but also emotionally aware. We need to design with flexibility, responsiveness, and empathy, integrating moments for connection, reflection, and mental breaks into our instructional flow. These students aren't just digital natives, they're navigating emotional worlds that are vastly different from what we faced at their age. So we just need to be aware. We need to be thinking about how they learn best. What is their world like? These are the things we need to keep in mind when planning instruction. So these students grew up in a world of having every minute of every day planned for them. They crave and need this structure and guidance. And I know we like to talk about, oh, they don't know how to do things like we do things. It's because they've never been taught. We have to teach them how to organize and structure and work through their own problems. I know many of these students have grown up with the snowplow parent, that has just taken every problem they've ever had out of their way before they even see it. So they don't know how to solve problems. We have to help them learn how to solve problems. I love this cartoon. At some point we have to stop swaddling him, right? And that's what I'm talking about. The helicopter parent, the snowplow parent, the parents they don't want their children to have to suffer with anything at all. And it's really having a toll on these students. So, storytelling and visuals, does this mean we have to allow them to use these in their writing? Of course not. They love it. They love icons and images and memes. I've had students in college who have emailed me and LOL'd, or they don't capitalize any letters. They don't use any punctuation. And so that's just how they've grown up, but I don't allow it. So if they communicate that way with me, I make it very clear to them that that is inappropriate, and I teach them the proper way to communicate. And that's what our jobs are. So it's okay in some fun activities to allow for some of this, to allow for emojis or, creating memes. But it's also important that we teach them the professional way as well. And so it's really important that we take on that role. They don't just know, they really don't. So, why am I learning this? This generation has had access to instant information their entire lives. Google, YouTube, and now AI are all just part of their normal. They don't just want information, they want relevant information. They're incredibly goal oriented and practical. If something doesn't feel useful or meaningful to their lives, they'll tune it out. So for them, learning has to have real meaning, real application, and a clear purpose. So we have to think about when we're designing our learning experiences for them. We have to keep all of this in mind. This is the epitome of meet them where they are. So 5 reasons why explainer videos are ideal for teaching Gen Z. 92% are online on a daily basis. I would be willing to bet that it could even be more than that. Their 8-second attention span needs a simple and fast message. That doesn't mean that you have to teach an 8-second snacks. That is not what we're saying here, but it is something to think about. You can't go on and on and on and on for 30 minutes and expect them to still be with you. 2 to 4 hours of video content consumed a day. I feel like that's probably more, but 10 plus hours of tech use a day, absolutely. And 70% of Gen Z students agree that technology helps them learn because I think they are used to this world. That's why I said this is the epitome of meet them where they are. This is their world. So we have to figure out how to meet them where they learn best. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Meet them where they are rather than negatively stereotyping. It may not always be easy or comfortable, but we must adapt to these new learners or become obsolete. Today's students are different, not less motivated, not harder to teach, just shaped by a different world. And that means our role as educators and designers must evolve too. We can either resist these changes or embrace the opportunity to reimagine learning in ways that are more meaningful, more inclusive, and more impactful. Instructional design is not just about delivering content, it's about connecting with learners. And when we design with intention, empathy, and innovation, we don't just keep up, we lead. Thank you for being a part of that work. So as you are working this week, you have 2 PDFs that I'd like for you to read. One is evaluating the pedagogy of technology integrated teaching and learning, and the other one is universal access through inclusive instructional design. Then also we have our discussions for each week. You will have discussion questions. There's a rubric that goes with that, so make sure that you're looking at the rubric. But I would like for you to read the discussion questions and make sure that you are responding to classmates. Your activities this week, that you are creating an infographic comparing ADDIE, UDL, TPACK, and SAMR. Include the strengths, limitations, and a use case for each model. The second thing you're going to do is develop a lesson plan that applies one or more of the selected instructional design models discussed. Your lesson plan should include the following components: grade level and content area, relevant state standard, clear objective, formative assessments, differentiation activities specific to the student needs in your classroom, and a closure. In addition, include a brief written reflection explaining how the selected instructional models informed your lesson design decisions and supported learner-centered outcomes. And then as you are progressing through this course, you're going to be creating a Google Site portfolio. And so each week at the bottom of your assignments, I will have what I would like. You're going to add that week's assignment to the Google Site. So each week you will complete assignments and reflections to contribute to your portfolio. This first week, a professional photo and brief bio about you, your philosophy of instructional design and educational innovation, at least one example showing how you applied or compared the instructional design models, and then which model most influenced your thinking and why. And again, there's a rubric for the portfolio. So each week you will contribute to the Google site. Therefore, at the end, it will pretty much be completed. You will just need to tweak it here and there, make sure that it's finished, check it with the rubric to ensure that everything is correct. That's it for this week. I am always available. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have questions or if you need help with anything, you need something clarified. Feel free to reach out and let me know. And I will see you next week.